So 1 second. We are ready, I think, from audio visual, but we're going to bring this meeting to order. Thank you. May we have a roll call?
Roll call vote. Benton.
Here.
Brooks.
Present.
Hart. Here. Haynes.
Here.
Hodge.
Here.
Latour.
Here.
McDonald. Sorry. Commissioner McDonald. Thomas. Commissioner Thomas. Vickers
Present.
and Vogel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Oh, Diana Thomas is here.
Okay, sorry.
you.
Commissioner Thomas, you will be marked present.
Yes.
Commissioner
thank you.
Haynes is also here. I didn't hear him speak, but
I marked Haynes present. Go over it again. We have Benton, Brooks, Hart, Haynes, Hodge, Latour. Did I get a vote for McDonald? Thomas is present, Vickers is present, and Vogel is present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I think we need to have a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting.
Move that we approve the minutes from the prior meeting.
Second.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Benton,
Yes.
Brooks, Hart,
yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Hodge, Latour,
Yes.
McDonald, Thomas,
Yes.
Vickers, and Vogel, sorry.
Yes.
Minutes have been approved.
We have a reading of the consent agenda, please.
It's the reading of the consent agenda for the July 14, 2022 Little Rock Planning Commission meeting. Number one, these are the items on consent deferral. Item A, Z9681. This is a rezoning from I-2 to I-3 on the east side of Thayer Street, 2000 block. The applicant failed to notify the surrounding property owners as required. Staff recommends the application be deferred to the August 11, 2022 agenda. Item B, consent deferral, rezoning from R2 to R4, located at 13506 Alexander Road. The applicant failed to notify the surrounding property owners as required. Staff recommends the application be deferred to the August 11, 2022 agenda. Item 3 on consent deferral is Z9692, JRJ Building, LLC Duplex, conditional use permit at 1504 South Valentine Street. The applicant submitted a letter to staff on June 22, 2022, requesting this application be deferred to the August 11, 2022 agenda. Staff supports the deferral request. Item 7, Z9695, the Villas at Autumn Road, PRD, located at 400 through 412 Autumn Road. Staff recommends the application be deferred to the August 11, 2022 agenda. Items that are on consent approval. Item 1, S1930, it's Harley Lane minor subdivision, final plat, west side of R Street Pike, approximately 0.46 miles south of West 65th Street. Staff recommends approval of the proposed preliminary final plat, subject to the compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraph D and E, and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item 2 on consent approval, Z8142C. This is PDC Development Company, conditional use permit at 4124 South Shackelford Road. Staff recommends approval of the requested conditional use permit to allow for the development of a high-rise multifamily development within the O2 zoning district, subject to the compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraph D, E, and F, and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item 4 on consent approval is Z9698, Christ Community Church, conditional use permit, located at the northeast corner of Chenal Parkway and Chenal Valley Drive. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP to allow for the development of a church facility at the northeast corner of Chenal Parkway and Chenal Valley Drive, subject to the compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraph D and E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item 5, Z9696. Excuse me. Item 5 is on regular. Item 6, Z.
No, I think you're correct. Item 5 stays on the consent. Item 6 goes to
Sorry.
the regular.
Item 5, 9696, rezoning from R2 to C4 at 12297 I-30. Staff recommends approval of the requested C4 zoning. Item number 6 has been moved to regular. Item 8, the last item on consent approval, A-341/Z-9699. It's on T-Boat Zuber annexation and I-3 heavy industrial zoning at the northwest corner of T-Boat and Zuber Roads. Approval of the annexation and classification of the land as I-3 heavy industrial district. This concludes the reading of the consent agenda.
Thank you. May we have a motion to approve?
Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
On the consent deferral, item 7, Z-9695. Staff, do we have a detailed reason for this one being deferred until August 11th? I see all the rest of them have one, and this one just says staff recommend application.
The application did not meet all the requirements, the things that was needed to be included on a preliminary plat, therefore it cannot be heard at this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Move that we approve the consent agenda, including all the staff comments and conditions.
Second.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Bedden,
Yes.
Brooks, Hart,
Yes.
Haynes, Hodge,
Yes.
Latour,
Yes.
McDonald, Commissioner McDonald,
Yes. Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Vickers,
Yes.
and Vogel.
Yes.
The consent agenda has been approved unanimously.
Well, thank you all for coming in person. I think anyone related to item 6 should stick around. Everybody else, feel free to leave unless you want to hear items 9, 10, and 11. Or 6. And I guess we'll have a reading of item 6 and start with that on our regular agenda.
This reading of item 6, it's on the regular agenda. Woodlands Valley, revised PRD, located on the south side of Cooper Orbit Road at Canis Road. The applicant proposes to revise the previous approved PRD rezoning of a R2 residential development at the intersection of Cooper Orbit Road and Canis Road for a 215 lot development with single-family patio homes and attached residential townhomes at 5.17 units of lots per acre. The previously approved PRD portion of the property had 81 lots, with the R2 zone preliminary plat portion being approved for 65 lots for a total of 146 total. This site is currently undeveloped, heavily wooded. The property contains varying degrees of slope, primary sloping downward to the south to the north. The proposed plan will consist of garden patio homes on the perimeter lots around the north, east, south and west sides of the development, and detached residential townhomes on the internal lots. The property is bordered to the north by PDR zoning and C1 zone properties, and primarily by R2 developments containing single-family dwellings along the west, south, and east perimeters of the property. Staff is supportive of the request to revise PRD zoning to allow the single-family townhome development. Staff views the request as reasonable. The property is located in an area with predominantly R2 zone residential properties with a scattering of commercial zone properties to the north along Canis Road. The proposed development will represent a quality infill type development. Staff believes the proposed increased density will have no adverse impact on the surrounding properties. Staff recommends approval of the request to revise PRD zoning, subject to the compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraph D and E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report.
Thank you. May we have the applicant? Good afternoon.
Good evening, Chairman and Commission. I'm Brian Dale with Joe White and Associates, representing the developer. Also have one of the team members with me, Scott Hurley, is with me. Staff has done a great job of introducing the project. We'd like to say that we've worked closely with staff in the surrounding POA with Woodlands Edge. It's a development similar to Taylor Park and other neighborhoods just like it, and we would like to reserve our time after we hear comments.
Great, thank you. We have two objectors in the room who filled out green cards. Let me rephrase that, three. I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was a third card. We reserve 20 minutes for the applicant and 20 minutes for all of the comments from the opposition. So we'll just start in order of the cards. Ross Phillips.
My name is Ross Phillips. I'm representing the Spring Valley Manor POA along with Gina McDonald, our POA president. We're not here is in opposition to this project. We're here for some clarification. We have always had some questions concerning the engineering aspects of it, and we've had some concerns about the funding and the projected time of the Panther Branch Road that is going to be essential for this project, and also is very important for our neighborhood, which is to the west of this project. So basically, on those of us who are not city planners and engineers, when I looked at this new revised file, there was quite a few question marks on on paragraph D on the engineering comments, and I was trying to get some clarification on these questions about that, and also clarification about when the Panther Branch project, because this project is going to all come into Panther Branch, which is a new road that has to be built. And so when to make sure that Panther Branch development is in coordination with phase one of this project. My understanding is phase one of this project will also be coordinated with the building of Panther Branch. So basically, I have those questions that I'm sure, basically, hopefully engineering. I've talked to Scott Hurley today, and he answered some of them, but I just want to get clarification and things on the record concerning these issues.
Would that be a staff question that needs to be answered, or?
I can answer that question. Well, the first is, I do not believe that it is called Panther Branch right now, but I think several directors are in agreement that the board, that when we do this, it's not going to be Panther Branch. I believe it's going to be just Cooper Orbit.
That's
all the way to
we want
Canis.
that, yeah.
But yes, we have a condition that was placed on the original plan development that went through, approved previously, that extension needed to be completed whenever the right-of-way abandonment of the old portion of Cooper Orbit to take place. And this development, that it does occur in phase one. That drainage ditch that is needed and also the access to be put in is a phase one install as their entrance drive now that goes to Cooper Orbit. So that is a requirement that's in the conditions as placed and will be a phase one condition. So timing on that, I believe that an agreement has been signed between the three parties that is going to participate in the funding and construction of that extension, which is the developer, the city of Little Rock, and also Pulaski County. So that has been done, signed, and completed for that portion, and I believe the developer is starting that process now. I think within the next 2-3 weeks, they should be surveying that section, and I'd have to default to them for timing of design plans and submission. But that is a requirement to be done when phase one is in.
Okay, thank you. That is one of our essential clarifications, that Panther Branch is tied in with phase one.
And the city agrees, and that's why it was a condition previously. And it would be a benefit not only to this development, but to the city and also the citizens that live along Cooper Orbit.
Okay, thank you very much on that. And the funding question is, we just found out today as well that was one of our big questions, and we just found out today that there's been some commitment. We were always told that the funding was going to be there, but we never had anything in writing. But my understanding is that's there today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it will, once it actually gets bid for construction, to release the funds on the city side, it will go before the board of directors for approval for allocation. We don't quite have that. We have a percentage, but we don't have the exact amount. So when we get that amount, it will go before the board of directors for approval.
Thank you. The other concerns, some people have expressed some concerns about, and once again, the engineer perhaps can answer that question, when they do the advanced grading of all 42 acres, we've got flooding issues along Cooper Orbit Road, and I was asked to speak for several of the people on Cooper Orbit Road as well. We've got flooding issues now. I understand that they're going to be required to do a lot of berming and things once they clear all 42 acres on advanced grading, but we're concerned about that. Does the city enforce erosion control and thing, or is ADEQ enforce that?
We will enforce it on this site.
Okay.
When it's inside the city limits, we enforce what our agreement is with ADEQ.
Okay. So basically, that's our main concerns on that issue, that the funding. A lot of things have been answered today thanks to the diligent work of our ward representative who's found out a lot of stuff for us. So that's basically the main concerns we've got. I would like to ask engineering if their plan on the 42 acres, if they're planning to cut and fill, how are they going to do it? Are we going to have a lot of traffic, a lot of trucks on Cooper Orbit, a lot of potential obstruction? Because it is our only way, well, rather than going around to Colonel Glenn, it is the most well-trafficked area in there. So perhaps they can answer from the engineering perspective how they're planning on doing the cutting and filling and leveling of everything on that, and how they're going to maybe be able to address those issues.
Well, I believe the consultant here tonight can address that question on the amount of it. I can address the question on traffic, since this would be the main entrance to this. Any haul off that they have will have to go out to Cooper Orbit, but we do have a requirement that they produce a haul route of where they plan to take it through there, and depends on the damage and the location that the repair is made. Upon that time, that's approved, wherever that haul route goes. Some of those roads that they may hit, if it's a road that was made for that, those types of vehicles can drive on certain roads that was made for them. So that's why we require a haul route. But as far as and that is addressed at the time that the actual construction is done, and we monitor that. But for the cut and fill, that would be a question that their consultant, Mr. Brian Dale, can answer when he gets back up to address some of that concern that you have.
So the haul route is not in place yet. It'll be coming as they start to.
No, not until it gets approved through the deal, then we will review all the plans, and the haul route is part of that.
Okay, well, I think that helps a lot, and then I'll let unless Gina wants to speak. Okay, I'll let Mr. Dale come back. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
We have a couple of other oppositions, so we'll let them continue. We hear from Steve Lucci. Did I say that right?
Lukey, but that's close.
Lukey, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And I'm sorry I'm not experienced in this environment, so if I'm out of line or out of protocol, let me know. I live on Winthrop Point, right out at the corner. I don't represent the neighborhood. We have spoken to our neighbors, both on Winthrop and also on Cove. So this is the first time we've seen a drawing, so maybe we're supposed to go to your office and get a copy, or I talked to our business manager of the HOA. She wasn't aware of tonight's meeting. She wasn't aware of this, so maybe I've been remiss in not educating myself as to the design of what's going on. So our questions were, does PRD mean apartments? And I guess what you're saying from the design here, this means patio homes and not apartments. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I guess to scale, obviously we're concerned of how close this comes to our backyards. And are there drawings that, should we go to your office to get these and not take up time now? Or is this the time?
We can answer the setback, I think, from the drawing.
We can answer the setbacks, but everything that we're talking about tonight on the agenda currently is online and available underneath littlerock.gov. If you go there to our website,
Okay.
Underneath the departments, planning and development, there'll be a tab, click on the link over to the right that says commission agendas. Okay. I'm actually running it right now at this iPad to pull this stuff up. So the layout is there. Now the actual, if you're looking for plans for the development as a whole.
Well, we're curious because right now on my back deck, I can see an orange tagged stake.
Okay.
So if that's the property line, if I'm going to be looking at a house right there, then I realize this is a done deal, but that's obviously going to hit the value of our properties up there. But because I don't know if you can, well, you can't quite. Yeah, the house actually is inside of that buffered area there to the south. But is this the same stuff I'm going to see online?
Currently it is, but it is to scale. I mean, you could download it.
Is that orange flag stake the property line of this?
I would have to defer to we don't flag the property lines.
Okay.
That would be the developer and their consultant to do so. Okay. And he may be able to address the area of concern that you're talking about on the distance too.
Okay.
In the drawing, it shows a 50-foot undisturbed buffer. I can barely read it, but that's what the diagonal hash line that's rectangular says within it. That's 50 feet of undisturbed buffer.
50, okay.
Are you 21 or 22?
Are you speaking to me? Someone's talking to me?
I was trying to.
I'm at 38 Winthrop, which isn't marked.
Okay.
And other folks are at 39 and 40, and then the folks at Cove Creek are around the other side. But again, I don't represent everyone.
Right.
We've just all spoken about how close this is going to come to our back decks. Okay, so 50 feet's the hash. My eyes are old eyes.
Yeah, it's
So
hard to
50
read.
feet's the hash. Okay, we'll go from there and then we'll pull from there. Okay, no apartments though, correct?
That's correct. It's as it presented, if you look at the layout, kind of zoom in, Walter, there's going to be single-family homes. Okay. And Mr. Dale can explain more about the specific location, the specific types of homes placed.
No, we just didn't want to have a three-story apartment 60 feet behind us, looking off our deck, so.
No, a three-story apartment is not proposed at this location.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know, and maybe our HOA should have known more. I apologize for taking everyone's time if we should have been better educated on this, but we didn't know, and that's why I'm here, and I'll tell the other folks what's going on. We will access the website. Thank you.
And if you have any further questions, feel free to contact. I've got my card with me. You can contact staff, and we can send you any information that you may need on that.
Yeah, we're not flipping out. We just are concerned. And obviously, when you go from a nice wooded area to folks, you know, you kind of wonder how many folks and how close. So we're not antisocial, we're just set in our ways. We're old and rotten.
Thank you. This is what this process is for, is to educate everybody about what's going on.
I paid my taxes, so I thought I'd get my 5 minutes of fame. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Randy Ray?
You got it right. Thank you. Steve is my next door neighbor, and I'll plead the same ignorance on this process. This was more informational to me. One question I did have, and maybe it's for the developer, the letter says there will be an 80-foot buffer with a minimum of 50 feet of green space trees. It's all trees back there, so why wouldn't it just be 80 feet of trees is one question I have. The original proposal, as I understood it, was these homes would be of approximate same size value as the neighborhood. Now they're wanting to put more in. I know there's been an ongoing debate about a traffic light out there, and I had a question on that as well. Is that still in the works? I know they're changing the interchange on Cooper Orbit, but this east side development has a number of homes. They're wanting to put more homes into this development. There's just going to be a lot more traffic. So is there any, can you give any idea about how that traffic flow is going to be addressed?
Are you speaking about the intersection at Canis and the proposed Panther Branch /
We
Cooper
come out
Orbit?
of Woodlands Trail to Canis, and I think they did a study. There was at first an issue of putting a light there, was my understanding. And I don't know if that's still in the works or now it's going to move down with this change. So that's just another question that I had.
I think there is going to be a traffic light on Canis somewhere, but
Yeah, that's it. I can address that. One, traffic signals installed by the city at any intersection has to meet warrants for that installation. And I believe if you listened to the discussion of the approval of when this development was to access Woodlands Trail back out to Canis, part of that discussion was the amount of traffic that would hit it and would it meet warrants. And the proposal at that time, and agreed upon, if I am misspeaking, I'm sure the developers will speak to it at that time, it was we agreed that the infrastructure underneath was definitely something that was to be installed at that time so that we get it in the proper location where it needs to be at that intersection. But the poles itself and signals would be installed at the time that it was warranted that they met those analysis. And that would depend upon the amount of traffic generated, and potentially as a development comes in, homes get sold and additional, then you get closer to that warrant, meeting that warrant to install that signal. And that's not uncommon throughout the city to do so. We've done it on larger roads like Rawling and some other roadways that a signal gets placed, the infrastructure does, like the bases and conduits, stuff to pull the wires and the boxes, but the poles don't get installed. So with the signal, with the traffic for this one going away from Woodlands Trail and going to Cooper Orbit, that same warrant analysis would be required for installation of a signal at that location. But that is the location that would be the signal, and then Woodlands Trail would still stand on its own for if a signal is warranted at that location. And in their extension, we was look at the same thing. I've talked to the developers about that. It is going to be, like I've said, there's going to be an agreement between the county, the city, and the developer for that extension. So we'd be looking for the same stuff to be installed, looking for the infrastructure underneath it, the conduits, the boxes, get that location set so that when it does meet warrants, that the poles can be installed and turned on and be an operational intersection. But the plan is for that to be an operational intersection because if you remember, I don't know if you've been looking at some of the rezonings in the area just to the north of Canis, that property was rezoned to a commercial development just due to the fact that it would be at that intersection. So even though it may be a T intersection right now, that development driveway will line up with what the intersection will be. And although that would be a leg of the intersection that is not much traffic on because it's the commercial development, but the plan is to have that intersection signalized. Just due to the amount of traffic that's on there, I do not see that being a stop sign controlled intersection as the development grows and more traffic is added.
And that may have been a misunderstanding on the part of the neighborhood that there would be a light, and I think maybe they did a study. And I'm sorry, are you talking about Woodlands Trail at Canis? Because there's now going to be three, basically where they do the new entrance at Cooper Orbit and then the new exit at Panther Branch. Is there any idea which one of those would have the light? Or is it all, as you said, it's based on future studies?
Based on the future warrant. There is a design criteria of you do not want to put too many signals together. You don't want to have them
I understand.
every block, and it depends on the traffic. So I can assume a lot of stuff right now based upon, because we don't have a true traffic count for that location.
Well, you've answered it. At this point, it's to be determined.
Yes, but the plan was, because of all the traffic coming out at the existing Cooper Orbit and Canis intersection, that when we did move that, where Panther Branch is now, and make that tie, that would be the signalized intersection for the future, and that section of Cooper Orbit goes away, is removed, and there's not enough traffic going on Kirby to warrant a signal, and currently there's not enough traffic on Woodlands Trail to warrant a signal.
Okay. And then will the developer address my question about the green space and reducing the lot size? And I'm not necessarily opposed either. When in doubt, check no, but I just, it's more informational.
Yeah, I'm sure they will address that.
Okay, thank you.
So opposition, thank you. And applicant, do you want to address the opposition?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the first question was about the funding in Panther Branch Road, and I think Director Collins did a very good job. The Honorable Judge Hyde did execute the agreement earlier this week. The developer has released our firm to start the survey work and the design of the connection or the relocation of Cooper Orbit Road. We hope to have a survey crew out there next week, and we'll immediately go into the design of those documents and work with staff to bid the project and go through the process that Director Collins stated. But the funding is in place. The agreement has been executed by all three parties, as the Director Collins stated. The advanced grading and the flooding issues. Both the city and ADQ will monitor us for erosion control issues. The city will probably be there first, but then the state will eventually get a call and they'll be there as well. So we'll have two people monitoring us as we do it. The design right now is to do all the cut fill on site. So we shouldn't be hauling any earthen material out of the site. Now, right now, we have begun the clearing of the site, and they are logging it, and they are hauling logs out of the site. But the earthen material will balance on the site. The cuts and the fills will balance, that we shouldn't be hauling any dirt out or in. And that was part of the reason for us getting advanced grading, so that we wouldn't haul the material over city streets. As for the PRD, this is a PRD application. There is not any apartments proposed with this project. It is just like the Taylor Park project, meaning we're doing single-family homes on the exterior circle, and in the inside there will be attached patio homes. They'll have a common firewall, and each person will own to the center of that firewall. But it's almost a mirror image of the Taylor Park subdivision that's a little bit to the east. I believe there was a question about an 80-foot buffer versus a 50-foot buffer. With our last approval that we came through, I think it was roughly a year ago now, we had a 50-foot buffer to the south, the same 50-foot buffer that we had today. It wasn't something that was required, but when we were working with Rocket Properties, the developer to the south, they asked for that as part of a condition for tying on over to Woodlands Trail. The developer conceded that and is still honoring that, even though we're no longer tying into Woodlands Trail. They didn't want to give something and then take it back. So The same 50-foot buffer that was there before is the same 50-foot buffer there that's going to be there today. As for the home size, they're going to be roughly the same size as Taylor Park. I just don't really know. Are the attached home, do you know more about the home size? Sorry, I should have asked you that before. This is Scott Hurley. He's on the development side.
Yeah, when we brought this piece of property before the city about a year ago, there was a different layout. And just in short, the world's obviously changed in the last year. And so that project is no longer feasible. We made changes, worked with staff. We've done subdivisions similar to this layout in 4 other communities in Little Rock. And what we're, I guess, most excited about is the hardest thing right now is affordability. And by being able to get this design, we're going to be able to sell homes at a lower price point that's going to be more affordable for people. So that's the reason for the change in lot sizes.
Do you happen to know those communities that you've previously built this?
Yes, the most comparable one would be Taylor Park, which is walking distance from this property. Parkside at Wildwood is on Denny Road. Stagecoach Village is all common wall patio homes. And then we built out, I don't know, the last 30 or 40% of Reservoir Heights.
Thank you.
I think that's all that I have, unless the commissioners have any questions for us. We'd be glad to answer them.
Great. Do any commissioners have any questions at this time?
I have one.
Please.
What was the need for the change? I know you said over a year, things changed. What was the original need for change from the original first set of plans to what we have now?
Like more details, then it's just not financially feasible due to gas doubling and everything else. Costs have just skyrocketed. So to do that project, lot sales would have to be at a price that are no longer affordable. People weren't going to pay them. We're now heading into mortgage rates that have doubled. It just became not feasible to do that project.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners online? Hearing none, I guess we will call for a vote. Well, we kind of exhausted our time for the opposition, but I think that sets a bad precedent to allow further communication after we've had the opportunity for the opposition to ask their questions. So I think the next step would be, if you have further questions, to reach out to the staff or the developer, or see this at the next level. So may we have a roll call vote after we have a vote?
The motion first. I move for the approval of item Z 9536A, including all staff comments and conditions.
Second.
We had a lot of feedback, so is everybody okay with that motion in the second?
I can repeat the motion. That feedback.
We ready to take a vote then? The motion in the second were heard? Correct.
Bedden? Excuse me, Bedden?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yes.
Hart? Yes. Haynes?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Latour?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Vickers?
Yes.
And Vogel?
Yes.
The project has been approved unanimously.
Thank you. If you are here for item 6, that concludes our public comment for that item. Thank you, applicant. I would ask that we do the next three items in this order. 11, 10, 9. So backwards, if that's all right.
That's fine.
So we'll hear
That
the
is at your discretion, Chair.
Thank you, sir. We'll hear the presentation on the establishment of a Central High School local, very important word, local ordinance historic district.
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Ratzlaff. I'm the urban designer for planning and development and staff of the Historic District Commission. I do have a presentation to pull up, so I'm going to wait until we get that done because it's just very helpful to have visuals with this type of topic. Okay, perfect. So this request is a proposal to establish a local ordinance district for the Central High Neighborhood Historic District, which covers both Wright Avenue and Central High historical neighborhoods. According to the city's historic preservation ordinance procedures for establishing an LOD, which is what I'll refer to it as for ease, the Planning Commission is one of the two entities to provide recommendations on the proposal before the HDC presents it to the Board of Directors. If we go to the next slide. And one more. Okay, so this gives a good visual of what your piece is in this puzzle. You were provided a report on the LOD for this meeting, and ultimately your role in this process is to provide for your recommendation for the HTC to incorporate and to share with the board.
Anna, if I may interject for a second. Commissioners, we are getting major feedback. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself so that it stops reverberating here in the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's fine. So just to give you more context of what an LOD is, since I know we don't normally deal with these things, and the last time we've done this was in the 80s. So this is a little new for everybody. Can we go one back? I initially got these out of order. So, an local ordinance district is a geographically definable area in which historic structures and their setting are protected by public review at the municipal level, typically by a Historic District Commission. The Little Rock Historic District Commission is comprised of 7 members, and there are currently 23 historic districts in Little Rock. There is one existing local ordinance district that the commission reviews applications for, and this is the MacArthur Park Historic District. If an LOD, thank you. If an LOD were approved for the Central High Historic District, the Central High and Wright Avenue neighborhoods would gain a public review process and direct representation on the commission. Specific building permits for properties within the district, which would include review for demolitions and mostly exterior changes, would be reviewed by the commission or at the staff level in accordance with set guidelines specific to the district. Okay, can we go 2 more forward? Okay, this is a view of all of our historic districts. It does not show Broadmoor or Boyle Park, because they're in the southwest. If you look at the hatched MacArthur Park, that is our only local ordinance district. And the pink kind of salmon color is the Central High District, which we are in discussion about. One more forward. Perfect. So to give a bit of background on why we are pursuing this initiative now, the Central High District is Little Rock's first suburban neighborhood in the surrounding residential and commercial landscape of the Central High School, which is a National Historic Landmark. The neighborhood has more than 150 years of built history and over 14 different architectural styles within. Next slide, please. At the same time, the district suffers extensively from demolition, property neglect, and incompatible alterations. This has been the case for many decades since it was first listed to the National Register of Historic Places in 1996. If you could go one more slide. And then in 2009, the city established a design overlay district. This at large does very little to help with the demolition issue or review of most permit applications. It is one step, but it has not changed the major issue in a meaningful way. In 2012, when the nomination was expanded to even out all the buildings that were being lost, we are still in the same place or similar to where we were then. In 2014, it was listed on Preserve Arkansas's most endangered places list. And then in 2016, there was a vacancy study report by Place Economics. The city and many surrounding advocacy groups have enacted multiple efforts and indirect tools to address this endangerment and the effect on the surrounding property owners, but these have fallen short of impacting the issue. In the past decade, there have been at least 42 permitted demolitions within the district. This gives you a good view of what this looks like in the neighborhood. The border is the neighborhood that we're talking about. It's the same boundary for the Central High Historic District and the same boundary for the proposed local ordinance district. 23 of these structures were contributing that were demolished. The difference between contributing and non-contributing is a major factor in looking at historic districts. When you're contributing, you are a structure, or as a contributing structure, you present at least 55% or 50% of your historic material still and contribute to the overall aesthetic and architectural importance of the district. When you're non-contributing, you have lost most of your historic integrity. And this goes the same for National Register districts. Of these 48 demolitions, only 4 of these lots are now occupied with new construction. That means the rest are vacant lots in this neighborhood. And based on the Place Economic Study in 2016, almost 21% of the parcels in the neighborhood were vacant lots. This is not only a preservation issue, it's also a housing and neighborhood quality issue. Next slide, please. Concerning the National Register condition of the district, to remain a National Register historic district, 51% or more of the historical fabric must be retained. Since a professional survey of the district has not been performed since 2012, staff conducted an in-house analysis, and the results of this analysis are shown here and are the data-driven impetus of this proposal. Currently, there are 950 properties. 555 are contributing, 385 are non-contributing. 10 are individually listed. If you do the math yourself, you might be a little confused, but those will remain on the National Register even if the district is lost. So this brings the total estimated percentage of retained historic fabric to 59%. Typically, when you're looking at historic districts, anything below 60 is of concern. And staff estimates that if professionally surveyed, the percentage would be lower due to incompatible alterations to structures. Next slide, please. Okay. If the district continues to lose structures by demolition, neglect, or incompatible alterations, the Central High Neighborhood Historic District will be irreplaceably lost. Even if you reconstruct a structure, it is not historic. It is just an image of what was once there. The loss of the district designation is not the only casualty in this circumstance. Property owner access to state and federal rehabilitation tax credits and grants will also be lost. They will no longer be accessible or eligible to apply for these grants or the tax credits. Property owners have invested significantly in the neighborhood's historic fabric. For example, since 2010, property owners in the district have jointly invested at least $46 million in their properties in this area. Of these projects, 58 receive state and/or federal tax rehabilitation tax credits, with $2 million awarded. Often, these tax credits makes projects successful in that would otherwise not be financially feasible. So the loss of these tax credits, the loss of the access to these tax credits would be a huge loss for the economy in this area. Next slide, please. So this gives you a little bit of a view of the property owner investment. Over the years, it's a positive trend flowing with the national, international economy and the local economy. And the heat map gives you a little bit of an idea of how this is dispersed. So from permit data alone, we know that there's a positive trend and improved development by resident property owners is being sought, even when surrounded by these conditions. So this, if you go to that one more slide. So this investment has shown that the district is full of potential and not all is lost. There are plenty of structures that can be taken from non-contributing to contributing status. We are not constantly going down. That is one trajectory in the future of this district. It could look very different. As property owners continue to invest, they can bring these back with those historic tax credits, with those grants, and access to these grants make these transformations possible. This home, I believe, was abandoned and then had significant fire damage. And a property owner, this is just one example of many, a property owner was able to use the rehabilitation tax credits to bring it back to life into active use. One more slide, please. So this is the proposed local ordinance district boundaries. And to move forward with this and establish a local ordinance district for this area, this would be the benefits of retaining and stewarding the surviving historical character and value of the neighborhood that surrounds the Central High historic site, safeguard property owner access to state and federal economic development tools, and strengthen and stabilize the economic investments that are being made there. Thank you. Does the commission have any questions?
Commissioners, do y'all have any questions for Hannah?
I have one. How are the residents of the historic district notified about, when there's need for their own homes to be kept up to standards for the integrity of the historic district? How are they notified that these grants or other things are available to them?
We have multiple advocacy groups in Little Rock. We have the Quapaw Quarter Association, which surrounds both these neighborhoods. They make constant attempt to talk to residents about the access they have and are a really great resource for providing guidance on those, connecting them with the right people. In addition to that, when anybody makes contact with me, I also make the effort to do historic preservation education. When we have demolition requests that come from residents in this area, I make that known to them, and they choose, of course, whether they want to keep pursuing that or they want to hold off and delay and figure out how else they can continue the active life of the property. There's also Preserve Arkansas, who does a very similar thing, and both neighborhood associations I think have provided this education multiple times.
My last follow-up question, does your organization reach out to the neighborhood association, or is the neighborhood association required to find you all?
No, I mean, as staff at the Historic District Commission, working with the city, working under the city as city staff, we have already contacted them, the Wright Avenue and Central High, to talk with them about this, that we're proposing this. This has actually been looked at by both neighborhood associations beforehand, several years ago at different intervals. And it was not a city effort at that time. I can't speak to that because I wasn't here. But in general, this has been something that has been asked for multiple times.
Thank you.
by changing from a national historic district to a local LOD, then the city has more ability to influence the outcome. Is that correct?
Yes, if we can go back to that first slide. It'll give just a general view of what the residents would see, the changes that they would see when they apply for building permits. So just like MacArthur Park right now, when they apply for building permits or fencing permits, they would have an additional layer of review that would also allow the residents to have a public review process. So it is twofold. So the Historic District Commission, based on design guidelines, would regulate exterior changes that are visible from the street. Demolition public review, that doesn't mean no demolitions are allowed. It just means now there's a public review for them. And it would not review interior-only permits or zoning. That would stay with this body. So those are the main changes. It would not review ordinary maintenance, but Historic District staff, as they are now, are a resource to the best ways of maintaining your historic home. So that's technical access, or technical assistance that's accessible now.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Yes. If there's violations done against these, does the code enforcers from the city, now that this is on the city level, are they the ones to go out and enforce whatever the violations are?
Well, currently, we would enforce only on what is adopted now, but it is our staff that does that.
Okay.
So right now, it'd just be whatever the zoning is or the design overlay district. Well, once it is, if it is adopted as a local ordinance district and done through the Historic District Commission, then yes, staff, if somebody adds something to a home that was a contributing structure that makes it non-contributing or installs a fence or whatever the design guidelines comes out to be, then yes, we would notify and enforce, and then it would go before the commission for review.
Okay. Is that based on a complaint from someone, a resident in the neighborhood, or will our enforcers just be driving around and see something? How will that be?
It has happened both ways. It has happened by complaint. It has also happened, I don't know if Ms. Ratzlaff has actually drove around and saw some herself, but the prior staff member, Mr. Brian Minier, that did that, I wouldn't say that he was out there every day driving around, but yes, he drove around and found stuff and brought it in and enforced on it. So we do regulate it. We do look at it, but it is not on an everyday basis that we drive around right now, MacArthur Park area.
Gotcha.
I can add a little bit more to that. Most of that would be, that would definitely be a compliance issue that either, typically in my experience, that a homeowner would bring attention to a neighbor, and then I would work with that other homeowner to resolve that issue, or explain to the other neighbor that it's not out of compliance. So a lot of that is neighborhood driven, and I do drive around MacArthur Park, check on projects, see how people are doing. It's very rare that an unresolvable issue comes to that. So,
If this is adopted locally, how will these historic communities, be notified that we're now local driven versus national when it comes to the historic?
so the national designation is an honorary designation, even though it does give access to historic tax credits, and that won't go away. This will just be a local public review process that's overlaid on top of that. Very rarely do you see a local ordinance district on top of something that is not a National Register district. I don't think that possibly that could happen, but it's very it's very rare. They would be notified by by letter by our normal public notice process. But also, this is a very publicly engaged initiative, excuse me. So we've already notified all the neighborhood associations involved. When this goes to the board, we'll notify the residents. We also now have a social media page that we're using and trying to reach out to the appropriate neighborhood associations to pull them in anyways. So there'll be multiple avenues of engaging. I think we'll also be presenting at some point to the neighborhood associations. We've offered that, so.
Last question, and this may be for staff. If adopted, will the code enforcers, will there have to be some type of special training for them when it comes to this now that it's going to be local, or will everything just stay the same as far as that?
Yes, there is training that's involved in the historic aspect of it, and that is Ms. Ratzlaff's position to do that. Our zoning code officers do not enforce in the historic district. They would enforce for zoning issues as parking in yards and those type of issues, or if somebody tries to operate a commercial business out of the residence type of issue. But for these types of issues, it is I would say, a specialized look. There has to be training that they go to and look at, that I can't speak for all the time. I know that we have sent her already to some training here recently to do some, but they have to have knowledge of that historic, what makes a building historic, and also has knowledge of that, once it gets approved, the design guidelines for what that historic district is to be.
Okay.
I'll add a little bit more to that. We've had some residents that have proposed training for code enforcement officers in MacArthur Park and then in future Central High. And I think that's something that IS staff can achieve and put forth. I think it's a good, wise effort to do that. We don't expect code enforcement officers to be preservation professionals, but certainly to know the steps that someone would need to go through and to be able to recognize that and within international building codes coming out for historic properties.
Yeah, and my reason for asking is because I could see this kind of getting out of hand with some people not knowing the rules and regulations or the guidelines, and the phone ringing off the hook for the staff, and somebody's building this and they shouldn't. So that's my reason for asking. My last question, I know I said that previously. Did you say when you started on the map that there was a historic district in the southwest Little Rock portion?
Yes, sir, we can pull that map back up. Even though it probably doesn't show it, but at least show it on the list. They're the top two on the list. It's the Broadmoor Historic District. That's a residential historic district that I think was nominated 1 or 2 years ago. And then the Boyle Park Historic District. So both of those are, I believe, west of University. And they are just honorary districts. The only local ordinance district that we're proposing is for Central High currently.
Thank you.
With the hope and the goal that this helps staff preserve the historic nature of the national, monument of Central High and the community around it. If they don't have the ability to prevent, contributing structures from being demolished or changed, then they don't have the ability to keep the number of houses in the area contributing. So that was a key word in this whole presentation, and why I asked her to go before the short-term rental, because I have a caveat in the proposed ordinance there as well. So would you need a motion from us to approve this?
No, my understanding is that this is just more of an educational presentation for the next meeting, August or September, for y'all to look at this and provide a recommendation. You're welcome to read the report in full and provide comments to staff, me, as we move this forward. But your main role in this is the recommendation vote at a different time, I believe.
Chairman, I think that though a motion is not required, it's good to go on record to support.
I agree.
So I move that the planning commission extends a letter perhaps to the organization saying that we support what you're doing.
We can happily do that. Should we take a motion to do such a recommendation? And vote on it?
I made a motion.
I'll
Second.
All right, then we'll take a motion to show our support in writing to the powers that be. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Benton,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
Latour,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Vickers,
Yes.
and Vogel.
Yes.
Unanimous, 10-0.
Great, thank y'all. We will write that recommendation. I'll handle that. Now on to probably our last discussion here at this board or commission on the short-term rental zoning ordinance amendment. How do we want to proceed with that one? Do we want to read the entire ordinance, or do we want to?
Walter,
I think it might be appropriate for, I think Mr. Malone can speak about some of the changes that we made on the ordinance as the last meeting of the commission. And as I understand it, there is also some comments that we want to speak about, Chair, that may be entered in for an amendment to the ordinance. So I would just suggest that we go with just a summary of what staff did to make the changes to the ordinance as such, and then go over any discussion or proposed amendments to that. And depending upon those amendments, whether we can read those amendments in to be added in to the ordinance, that would allow us to have a discussion and then redraft those. And if it is approved, or redrafted after approval, it would be approved as amended. And so Mr. Overton would have to chime in on that, on how we need to make that motion, if there is any amendments that we may want to add or change some of that verbiage as is presented today.
Mr. Malone.
Mr. Chair and Planning Commissioners, the primary change, really the only substantive change that since last month when you got this draft ordinance, is to do away with the STR 1, 2, and 3 and just treat all STRs the same. We felt like we got pretty strong opinion from this commission that we should use the same process for all STRs, that being the special use permit process and not the zoning process. So there still would be a public hearing just to make sure everybody's aware of that. But it would be before this body, and unless somebody appeals that, that would be the final action on an STR, assuming this gets approved. We did leave that distinction one place in the draft, and that's where the discussion about the fee is for the annual fee, because the way it was drafted, the STR 1, which if you remember is the one where it's an owner run, they live as well as own the property for the STR, and that was the process of figuring out what that annual fee was different, so that they could potentially get a break in the fee, whereas the fee for the STRs where their owner does not live on site was a flat fee, and so that was the only distinction that we're leaving in between in the draft. Otherwise, the STRs would be treated the same. Short-term rentals will be treated the same, whether or not it's an owner-occupied or whether or not it's a non-owner-occupied STR.
Great, we have two people in the audience who would like to speak, and then I guess the commission will take this up. So may we have Pamela Powell, who's in opposition to this ordinance? Remember, we only have 20 minutes of public comment here, so you have another friend who would like to speak against it as well.
Can I get someone to pass? My name is Pam Powell. I'm president of the University Park Neighborhood Association. And upon a short notice of the updated version of the STR draft regulation, a quick review notes, just as Mr. Malone stated, that basically bed and breakfasts, STR 1s and 2s, have been lumped together as though they are the same. Let me assure you, they are not. We have a non-owner occupied STR in our neighborhood, and I've received multiple complaints. One piece of evidence is the photo that was just passed out. These women were on the front lawn of the non-owner occupied STR. I've been asked by multiple people exactly what were they advertising. There's no beach, no pool. And most people that I know sunbathe in the backyard, not the front yard, especially when wearing a teeny-weeny, itsy-bitsy bikini. And I fully believe that the owner of this home, had she lived there with her husband and 3 young sons, this type of behavior would not be tolerated. And this is only one of the issues. We bought our homes in an area zoned residential, not commercial. We were not notified that a commercial property would be locating in our neighborhood. In the proposed regulation, a special use permit is required for an STR. At the May Planning Commission meeting, there was a young man here requesting to use his home on Palm for an STR. The planning department staff recommended against it, yet the commission voted to approve his request. That does not give me a lot of faith in the special use permit process. Another issue is the notifications regarding these requests. At one time, everyone within 200 feet of these situations, as well as the neighborhood association presidents, were notified in writing regarding these. Now, one email comes out and we have to click on every link to see what's going on. When this first started happening, I requested that my beautification chair and social action committee chair also be added to the email list, but I was told this was not possible. It's an email. It doesn't cost 60 cents each. Nobody has to address it every time. This is an added burden for the neighborhood association presidents. I know you're understaffed too, but adding additional people to the email list should be granted to anyone who requests it. Neighborhoods should have a say whether STRs are allowed in the neighborhood when we have purchased a home in a residential area, period. If the neighborhood is okay with it, then fine. If not, then it shouldn't be allowed. You ask us if we see something, say something. We're a close-knit neighborhood, and we don't have a lot of people, different people coming and going, driving fast on our streets, parking cars and 18-wheelers on our streets, blocking the streets where we can't walk in our neighborhood as we have since its existence. We don't have sidewalks. The streets are where we have to walk. This type of situation increases risk to us who do so, and we will continue to say something. The sanctions listed, they have no teeth, no fines, just a piece of paper. Little Rock Planning Commission, your neighborhoods are depending on you to respect us and protect us. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne McClendon.
Good evening. I'm Joanne McClendon. I'm the president of the University West Neighborhood Association. We are south of Broadmoor down to south to Colonel Glenn. We are west of South University going to Boyle Park. About 400 homes, about half are rentals. That's not a bad thing, except most of my calls come for problems with renters who don't mind, who are not courteous, who don't know the parking rules in a neighborhood. So when I look at a short-term rental, I'm skeptical. It seems like there's going to be a question mark about a short-term rental if he was next door to me or any of my other neighbors. What's going to happen this weekend? Are they going to mind the rules? Are they going to be courteous? What about the parking? So I have a concern about that. I have watched your meetings for, I guess, since COVID started and they went online. I used to get notification of any problems in my neighborhood until I realized I wasn't getting them. And so we actually got a halfway house because I wasn't paying attention that I didn't get an email. We probably would have opposed that. I've noticed in your meetings that some director always asks, have you talked to the neighborhood association? Have they reached out to you? Well, I'm reaching here. I think that a short-term rental will dilute our owner-occupied homes even more. It would be, I would think, very concerning for a new homeowner or for a current one to find out that a house next door to them is going to be a short-term rental. I'm not sure I could deal with that. There would be a question mark every weekend. What are they going to do? What do I need to be ready for? I think I'm very hopeful that our neighborhood association or any of them would have a strong voice when you ask, have you talked to the neighborhood association? And the neighborhood association says, we don't want it. I hope that you would listen to that and that we could feel like we do have a voice in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope that your neighbors are always courteous and respectful. That said, we've had many months to discuss this ordinance, and I think we still have a duty to address the problem, and I think a good plan now is better than a perfect plan later. With that said, I've read the most current ordinance, and I would like to add one amendment to it in two places, but the same language. Under Article, on page 4, Article 14, Section 36-601, subsection A1A2A would read, it's not in the current version, but the annual inspection fee will be waived if the structure is in a historic district and passes inspection, adding to the historic district's contributing structure. So again, the annual inspection fee will be waived if the structure is in a historic district and passes inspection, adding to the historic district's contributing structure. That's why I asked for Hannah's presentation before, because I think it's very important that we try to incentivize developers, regardless of how they get there, to add to contributing structures in the historic districts we have. I would ask that same language be added to subsection B 2A, exactly the same language. The annual inspection fee will be waived if the structure is in a historic district and passes inspection, adding to the historic district's contributing structures. From a commissioner standpoint, like I said, I think this is a good plan. It's not a perfect plan, but it's a good plan. And I think this allows this body to proceed forward with a much smoother path to allowing the neighborhoods to communicate their pleasure or displeasure with a public hearing. With that said, I would hope that we as a commission are ready to, discuss this and vote on it. Do any commissioners have any other comments or ask at this time?
Robbie, I'm ready to send this on to the board. This is, we could debate the finer points of this and tweak it for the next 10 years. I mean, but ultimately, I think it's the city board and that leadership group that needs to decide for the city how we're going to handle this. And I think that's the precedent that's set in other cities across the country. Is that city planning commission is drafting and then sending it to the city board. So I don't need to talk about this or read it anymore. If the other commissioners don't, I would suggest that we strongly consider moving this on to the board tonight.
I agree. Any other commissioners present or online? If not, I would recommend a motion with the amendment that I requested be added if that satisfies the staff attorneys.
I move that the proposed amendment with associated amendments the proposed ordinance with amendments be passed on to the board.
Second.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Ed?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Haynes?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Mature?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Vickers? And Vogel?
Yes.
It's unanimous to move this on to the board for further discussion and approval.
And ladies, thank you for y'all's participation. We always appreciate public comment and promise you it does not go on deaf ears. So thank y'all very much for attending and participating. With that said, we have one final item, agenda item 9, and I apologize for going out of order, but we'd like to hear the discussion on complete streets and bicycle plan.
Mr. Chairman, John Landowski from the Public Works Department, who's the bike ped coordinator for the city of Little Rock, will present this.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, my name is John Landowski. I'm the City of Little Rock Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator. So in 2013, the Board of Directors passed a resolution, the Complete Streets Resolution, which directed city staff to rewrite the master street plan to better reflect Complete Streets principles. Complete streets just means streets that are designed to move people driving, people walking, people riding a bicycle. And in that resolution, they cited equity concerns, economic growth concerns, health, safety, a myriad of concerns that Complete Streets addresses. So what we had in the master street plan was a master bike plan. That plan was drafted by local commuters, local bike commuters, as far as the routes that they preferred to ride, but it was never really looked at by an actual planner. Those routes were also not really vetted by our traffic engineers. So when we go to resurface streets or touch streets, we might have that as a route for, say, a bike lane, but that might not really be feasible, or it might not really serve a network as a whole. So what I did is write a grant to get a professional planning agency who's familiar with current best practices from bike network planning, also understands what is feasible and not feasible on different kind of streets. We selected Alta Planning, and McClellan Engineering was the local contributor to that. They have, we reached out to the local community. We had over 1,300 people submit comments as far as the survey goes, and over 700 map comments. So it was very well received, or very, there was a lot of comment on it. We have a draft version of that Complete Streets Bicycle Plan. And so I'm here to basically let you know that we have that plan. And it's similar to the other presentation as far as this is, I'm not asking for a resolution. This is more of an educational presentation. But I'm happy to answer questions about what it is, what we're trying to do with it, that kind of thing.
And if I may, Chair and Commissioners, the plan that Mr. Landowski is talking about will be incorporated into the master street plan, but we also have some other stuff that we need to incorporate into the master street plan. It will be coming before the commission, because that is their purview to prepare that for presentation to the board of directors for approval. And so when y'all see it, you'll actually see not just Mr. Landowski's work that they've done for that, but we're also going to do our best to incorporate also our trail system that the Parks has come up with, because it is not in the master street plan. We also want to incorporate Rock Region Metro's routes so that we can change it on a basis and put that in there too, so we can actually try to get some of the developments that is needed for the bus routes on the master plan. Therefore, that's also part of, we're going to rebrand that to be a master transportation plan coming for the commission. So I'm hoping to get that to everyone this year to start looking at that. But Mr. Landowski's plan that they have prepared in Public Works will be part of that, and will be coming before the commission and the board soon.
Well, it's very popular right now, so good timing. Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Landowski?
Thank you for your hard work. Putting this.
Concur. Hearing no other questions, just want to thank you again for your time and getting the grant. I appreciate it. I hope our city does too. So thank you.
Yeah.
With that said, we'll adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.